There comes a moment in every person's life where they realize holding on too tightly doesn't bring someone closer. In fact, it pushes them away. We often grip, cling, chase, and overextend ourselves in the name of love, connection, or hope. But real transformation doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go, because the moment you let go, not with anger, not with fear, but with clarity and self-worth, that's the moment your absence begins to echo louder than all your presence ever did. Letting go is not about losing, it's about reclaiming your identity, reclaiming your energy, reclaiming the love you once poured endlessly into someone else and finally turning it back toward yourself. And when that shift happens, when the energy you used to invest outward comes back inward, it shakes the room, people feel it, he feels it, because for the first time you're not available in the way you once were. You're no longer predictable, you're no longer accessible in the ways you once allowed, and that absence, it becomes magnetic. Emotional detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means becoming cold, distant, or heartless, but in reality, emotional detachment is about reclaiming your peace and your power. It's the shift from reacting to responding, from chaos to calm, from begging to boundaries. When you stop pouring all your emotional energy into someone who doesn't value it, something powerful happens. You return to yourself, and in that return, you radiate strength. You become a presence that doesn't need to chase, convince, or plead, because you're anchored in your own center. And the moment that energy changes, it's felt deeply, especially by the person who is used to your constant emotional availability. This shift is not an overnight process. It comes after countless moments of overextending, after realizing that your love cannot be proved through struggle. Emotional detachment means no longer making someone else's actions responsible for your inner peace. You begin to realize that your worth is not tied to how someone else sees you or treats you. Instead, it's tied to how you see yourself and how you protect your energy. You stop explaining yourself to someone who never really listened. You stop giving second, third, or 10th chances to someone who never showed change. You don't do this out of spite. You do it out of self-respect. And that's what makes it so powerful. When someone is used to your emotional reactions, your texts, your questions, your concern, they begin to rely on that energy to feel in control. The moment you detach, they feel that shift like a door quietly closing. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, but it's final. It signals a change they didn't expect. Suddenly, they can't predict how you'll respond, because you're no longer responding to them at all. That lack of access. It becomes louder than all the conversations you ever had. The silence becomes a mirror, and they are left to sit with the reflection of their own behavior. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself not to beg for the bare minimum. It means you are done outsourcing your value. You no longer wait for someone to recognize what you bring to the table. You know what you bring, and if they can't see it, that's not your burden anymore. Detachment is clarity. It's emotional maturity. It's choosing peace over patterns. And the most powerful part is this. When you finally step back, they don't just feel your absence. They start questioning why they ever made you feel like you weren't enough. Because now, you're no longer trying to fit into a space you've outgrown. You've elevated, and your energy speaks before you ever say a word. When you remove yourself from the equation, your value becomes crystal clear, not just to them, but to you. People tend to notice what's gone far more than what's always available. When your presence is constant, it can become background noise, comforting, but often overlooked. But the moment you take a step back, when your calls stop coming, your messages slow down, and your attention is redirected inward, there's an undeniable void left behind. That space, that silence, starts echoing. And what was once familiar becomes something they begin to crave. Your absence becomes the lesson they didn't know they needed. You see, presence is powerful, but absence reveals worth. As long as you keep showing up, even when you're not being appreciated, you're unintentionally telling the other person that your love and energy come without boundaries, but when you pull back, they begin to feel the shift in frequency. It's like the lights dimming in a room. They may not notice every flicker, but when it's suddenly dark, they can't help but feel it. And that darkness forces them to look inward. They start to reflect. Why is this energy no longer here? What changed? The truth is, you changed. You stopped giving all of yourself to someone who never truly earned it. We teach people how to treat us by what we tolerate. If someone gets used to your constant validation, your emotional support, your check-ins, they begin to expect it not because they value it, but because they rely on it. And often, it's not until that energy disappears that they realize what it really meant. They begin to notice the peace your presence brought, the comfort your words gave, and the consistency your love delivered. That absence becomes undeniable. It's no longer about you doing the chasing. Now, they start feeling the impact of what it means to live without your presence. More importantly, your absence teaches you just how much you've been giving without receiving. It allows you to reevaluate the emotional imbalance and remember that your love is a gift, not a guarantee. The distance gives you perspective. You begin to see clearly how much energy you were investing into a connection that may not have been pouring back into you. That clarity becomes your strength. You no longer fear being missed. You understand it's inevitable. So when you let go and your energy is no longer present in their daily routine, they begin to feel that weight. Not because you're trying to teach them a lesson, but because you're finally teaching yourself how to stop overgiving. That energetic silence becomes louder than any confrontation. It becomes the mirror they didn't expect to face. Your absence, in all its quiet power, becomes the most undeniable proof of your worth. When you stop chasing and start living, your energy transforms. You're no longer directing your focus toward trying to get someone to notice you. You're pouring it into building yourself up. That shift is magnetic. Suddenly, you're not waiting by the phone, scrolling endlessly, or overanalyzing mixed signals. You're taking up space in your own life again, and here's the most powerful truth. People are drawn to those who are already fulfilled. They can feel when your energy is no longer centered on them. It unsettles them not because you've done something wrong, but because they can feel you growing beyond their reach. There's something incredibly attractive about someone who's focused on their goals, their joy, and their inner peace. When you stop trying to manage someone else's feelings or reactions and instead start managing your own alignment, the dynamic changes completely. You're no longer trying to pull someone toward you. You're creating a life that they want to be part of. You're radiating self, trust, independence, and direction. That energy speaks louder than words or attention ever could. And the very person who once took you for granted begins to feel the gap your absence created. This doesn't happen because you're playing games or using silence as a tactic. It happens because your energy is no longer needy, it's rooted. You're not trying to win them over anymore. You've already chosen you. And people feel that difference. They feel the release, the tension they once relied on. Your emotional availability, your constant giving, is no longer there. That release can be unsettling for them because, for the first time, they're experiencing what it's like to not be the center of your world. And oddly enough, that's when you start to occupy more space in their mind. When you live your life with passion and purpose, you automatically raise your energy. You're showing, not telling, that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's presence. And ironically, that's when people start chasing. Not because you were desperate or loud, but because your silence, your detachment, and your glow without them becomes louder than any plea for attention. It draws them in, but more importantly, it draws you back to yourself. Letting go isn't about hoping they'll notice. It's about being so committed to your own peace and progress that their response no longer defines your direction. And when you move that way, confidently, clearly, and with emotional independence, you become unforgettable, because there is nothing more captivating than someone who knows their value and doesn't need anyone else to confirm it. That's when everything shifts, that's when the energy becomes undeniable, and that's when they start to chase what they once took for granted. When you begin to prioritize yourself, you send a message without saying a word, not just to the other person, but to the universe, to your subconscious, and to everyone around you. That message is, I am enough, I choose me, and that shift is seismic. It moves your entire energy field. When you stop overextending, stop explaining, stop fighting for a place in someone else's life, and instead turn that energy inward, your power multiplies. Suddenly, you're no longer reacting to what they do or don't do. You're responding to your own inner compass. And that kind of alignment is rare. It's what makes people take notice. People are attracted to what they can't fully predict, to what feels grounded and unshakable. And when you pull back, not out of manipulation, but out of growth, you become unpredictable in the most powerful way. They start to realize that they can no longer rely on your consistent presence. You're no longer available to be their emotional cushion, their backup plan, or their safety net. Your time, your energy, your heart, it's all being invested back into you. That withdrawal creates space. And in that space, they begin to sit with the reality of who you are, someone who doesn't need them to feel whole. And here's the secret. People don't truly value what's always accessible. They may like it, even depend on it, but it often takes distance for them to understand the depth of what you gave. Your constant availability may have made them feel secure, but it also made them complacent. So when you pull back, when you stop initiating, stop overgiving, stop waiting, you shock the system, you're no longer a given, you become a choice they now have to earn, and that realization hits them hard. At the same time, you're not doing this to provoke a reaction. You're doing it because you're finally seeing your worth clearly. You're not waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. You're not pressing pause on your life hoping they'll catch up. You're pressing play and moving forward whether they show up or not. That energy is unstoppable. It no longer asks, do they see me? It declares, I see me, and that's enough. And ironically, it's often in that clarity, when you're least concerned about them, that they start feeling the pull. So the moment you prioritize your healing, your joy, your growth, you flip the script. You're no longer chasing attention, you're attracting alignment, and when you show up in your life fully, without waiting for anyone to complete you, you become unforgettable, not because you tried harder, but because you let go. And in letting go, you finally created the space for someone to realize what they lost, and what they might never get back unless they rise to meet you where you are. When you stop trying to convince someone of your worth, you reclaim every part of your power. No more bending, no more shrinking, no more over-explaining or over-delivering. You begin to realize that real connection doesn't need to be forced, and the moment you step into that awareness, you stop chasing and start attracting. People feel the shift. You're no longer asking to be seen. You're no longer waiting to be validated. Instead, you walk with a different kind of presence, one that says, I'm not here to prove anything. I am the proof. You see, when you stop handing your energy to someone who isn't reciprocating it, you finally have the strength to reinvest that energy in yourself. That doesn't just change your mood, it changes your life. You stop hoping someone will get it one day. You start living in such a way that their understanding is no longer necessary, because the only person who truly needs to recognize your value is you. And when you lock into that truth, you stop orbiting around someone else's world and begin building your own. This is when the chase reverses, not because you played a role, but because you dropped the role entirely. You're no longer operating from fear of losing them, but from faith in finding you. That is what draws people in, not your effort, not your sacrifice, not your anxiety. Your self-respect, that's the real magnetic force. When you walk away from anything that drains your spirit, you send out a frequency of strength that calls in everything meant for you. And those who once ignored your presence begin to feel your absence like a shadow they can't escape. But here's the most liberating part. You're no longer living to be chased. You're living to be fulfilled. You're not interested in someone noticing your worth only after you've walked away. You want someone who sees it while you're standing there. Until then, your time, your energy, your love, they're being redirected back to the one person who always deserved them most, you, and whether or not they ever catch on, you've already won. Because you've chosen peace over performance, worth over waiting, and alignment over approval. In the end, you don't need to chase love, because real love doesn't run. It meets you where you are, respects your boundaries, and reflects your value back to you effortlessly. So when you stop trying, when you let go of the noise, the pressure, the proving, you allow space for something real to show up, something mutual, something rooted. And if someone from your past wants to return, they'll have to come back with more than just words. They'll have to come back with action, consistency, and growth. But by then, you won't be waiting, you'll be choosing. And that's your power. When you stop emotionally investing in someone who isn't showing up for you, A radical transformation begins within. You no longer give away pieces of yourself, hoping they'll finally see your value. Instead, you collect those pieces and become whole again. Your attention, your love, your presence, they're powerful resources. And the moment you withhold them from the wrong places, you begin creating space for something greater. You step back from trying to manage their perception of you and instead focus on your own reality, your own truth. That is the beginning of true emotional freedom. They may have been used to your constant giving, your emotional labor, your effort to keep the connection alive. But when that stops, something inside them wakes up, not because you are playing a game, but because energy doesn't lie. Your silence becomes louder than all the words you used to pour into the space between you. It forces them to notice what they were ignoring, your effort, your consistency, your presence, and in that silence a new clarity emerges. They begin to feel your absence where your love used to live. Here's the truth most people miss. Pulling back doesn't mean you're walking away with bitterness. It means you're walking inward with purpose. It means you've realized that pouring into someone who's not ready or willing to receive you is not strength. It's sacrifice. And you've done enough sacrificing. Now is the time to reinvest, not in them, in you. And in that reinvestment, you glow differently. You smile from a deeper place. You carry yourself with dignity and grace that comes from choosing peace over the need to be chosen. In fact, letting go of overgiving brings you back to your natural state. Magnetic, grounded, centered. You start remembering what you enjoy, what makes you laugh, what lights you up. That energy is what draws others in, not your efforts to keep them close, but your decision to thrive whether they're near or not. The chase reverses not when you try harder, but when you stop trying at all and focus on becoming the most honest version of yourself. That version doesn't beg, it doesn't perform, it simply is. And that being is enough. So understand this, your energy is your most valuable currency. If someone can't appreciate it when it's freely given, they'll feel the absence of it when it's gone. And if they truly care, they'll rise. If they don't, you've already risen without them. Either way, you win, because your worth was never tied to their response. It was always in your decision to honor yourself. At the core of this entire message is a truth most people overlook. Your energy is sacred. It's not something to be tossed into spaces that don't respect it. The moment you stop giving that energy away to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you begin to reclaim your emotional freedom. You begin to recenter yourself. You stop trying to fix, explain, or chase, and instead you return to the truth that you are enough as you are. That alone is a turning point that changes everything. We often think that giving more will finally open someone's eyes, that our patience, our effort, our love will eventually earn us a place in their heart. But the truth is, the harder you try to convince someone of your worth, the more they unconsciously devalue it. It is only when you stop feeding that dynamic, when you take your power back and pour that same energy into yourself, that others begin to feel what you were always offering them, and that contrast, that sudden silence, forces awareness. Your absence becomes louder than your words ever were, but you're not pulling back to get a reaction. You're not withdrawing to punish anyone. You're doing it because you've remembered who you are. You're done performing for people who don't know how to applaud. You're done explaining yourself to those who never really listened. You're done waiting for someone to see you when you've already seen yourself, and that kind of inner knowing, that fire within, is what makes people stop and take notice. That is what reverses the dynamic and brings others back to your orbit. Not your effort, but your elevation. And if they do come back, it's not because you begged, chased, or proved anything. It's because your shift in energy forced them to see what they were too blind to notice before. But by then, you're not the same. You're stronger, calmer, more rooted. You've done the work. You've healed the part of you that thought you had to earn love through sacrifice, and now you attract, not from desperation, but from a place of wholeness. Whether they return or not is irrelevant. What matters is you return to yourself. So let this be the final word you tell your old self. Thank you for trying, but now we rise. You're no longer afraid of losing someone else. You're more committed to never losing yourself again. Your silence is not weakness. It is clarity. Your withdrawal is not revenge. It is redirection. And your peace is not something you'll ever trade for temporary attention again. That is the power of stopping the energy leak. That is the moment everything begins to change. not just for them, but for you. Thank you so much for sharing your time, your presence, and your energy with me today. I don't take that lightly, because your attention is valuable, and where you place it determines what you build in your life. If this message spoke to your heart, it's because a part of you already knew what needed to change. Sometimes we just need a reminder of our worth, a spark to ignite what's been buried under fear, overthinking, and self-doubt. You are not here to chase love, you are here to embody it, to radiate it. To give it to yourself so deeply that anyone who wants to come into your life has to meet you at that same level. No more shrinking, no more chasing, no more settling. You are not too much, you are just enough for the right person. And your peace is the loudest proof that you've grown beyond needing validation from anyone who couldn't see your light. As you leave this space today, carry that knowing with you. Speak less, protect your energy. Choose your peace over performance, and never forget, the more you honor yourself, the more others will be forced to honor you, or get out of your way. Either way, you win. So from the deepest part of my heart, thank you again. Thank you for being open. Thank you for being brave enough to listen, and thank you for being willing to grow. Until next time, stand tall, protect your energy, and never apologize for walking in your power. Goodbye for now.